Welcome to our exciting circuit. Do your best and good luck.
Hello and welcome back everyone. Today I am taking a look back at Power Drift, a quite awesome racing game by Sega. Released in 1988, it was more technologically advanced than Sega's earlier racing games like Hang On and Outrun. In Power Drift, the entire world and track consist of sprites. The upgraded hardware of the Sega Y-board allows individual sprites and the background to be rotated even while being scaled, making the visuals far more dynamic. Designed and directed by Yu Suzuki, the game was a critical and commercial success upon release in arcades. It was subsequently ported to various home computers in Europe by Activision in 1989 and proved to be a bit of a hit and miss on those formats. Power Drift differs from most other racing games of the time, as the tracks all have a roller coaster feel to them, with many steep climbs and falls, as well as the ability to fall off of higher levels. To add to this feeling, the sit-down cabinet was built atop a raised hydraulic platform, and the machine would tilt and shake quite violently. There are 5 tracks in each circuit and 4 laps per race. Players advance to the next race by finishing in 3rd or better, but they do have the option of continuing from 4th or worse, by spending more money of course. This game was an absolutely outstanding game in the arcades back in the day. The stand-up cabinet was the one I found in arcades and was set up in a similar vein to Outrun, but it's the visuals and sound in this game that really set it apart. The game has this more kind of carnival feel to it, with the outstanding soundtrack and simply sublime sound effects, coupled with the roller coaster nature of the track layouts, and this game had no problem pulling in the crowds. And I still remember the first time I ever played this game in the winter of 1988. I was hooked right from the start. I loved the way the music never changed or stopped with the change of tracks. It was like Power Drift was a DJ at a party, and he wanted to keep this particular party going all night long.
3, 2, 1, go!
The stand-up cabinet still produced this amazing atmosphere for the game, but as you play and you get drawn in by the amazing sprite scaling visuals, You almost felt every climb and dip in the pit of your stomach, and I couldn't get enough of it at the time, and I wasn't alone, as I do not know anyone who hated this game at the time. A large part of the success of the game was no doubt the very impressive visuals. Sega were the undisputed kings of sprite scaling, and Power Drift was another fine example of how far Sega were pushing the envelope in those days. Everything ran so silky smooth, and even though the game never felt as fast as your speedo indicated, the tight nature of the track layout and the copious amount of roadside objects all helped create this illusion of speed. And it was great. Every hill climb, each dip, and each jump just looked simply amazing, and really did separate itself from every other racer about. The brightly coloured sprites, the busy tracks, the detailed cars, everything was so polished, it looked like a jump into the future. The soundtrack is absolutely one of the best around. I have used a couple of these Power Drift themes in some other videos of mine, and they are tunes that never seem to have left my head since 1988. I would be humming these tunes at various points in my youth, even though I hadn't played the game for ages. Sega really did knock the ball out of the park with this one, and it was such a joy to play. A few of their previous other sprite scaling hits were brilliant to look at, but very boring to play. Games like Space Harrier and Afterburner used fancy graphics and fancy cabinets to lure in gamers to what was otherwise a boring and dull gaming experience. Power Drift was just such a joy to play, it looked like Sega had righted some of the wrongs from previous sprite scaling entries. With this game being a massive hit in the arcades, the home ports had a lot to live up to. I still had my Commodore 64 at the time, but had been recently trying to convince my parents to get me a Sega Master System, without much luck. So if I was going to play this at home, I would have to play the Commodore 64 version. Let's just say, I was none too confident of it being any good. I have to say, this port onto the Commodore 64 is actually really good. The visuals are nowhere near as impressive as the 16-bit home micro versions, but when those versions move, they look terrible. This version did look pretty choppy, but it did move pretty fast, and even though the whole roller coaster nature feel of the game was a bit disappointing, on the whole, the visuals are pretty good for the Commodore 64, and it's a racing game with no raster bars in sight, which, had they been used, it might have felt even faster. The music had been faithfully recreated, and it's not a patch on the arcade, but by God, the little SID chip done a fantastic job with this soundtrack. The sound effects are garbage, however. Passing cars sound like a bee dying or something. But the playability on this port more than makes up for any inadequacies in sound or visuals. And I do remember having a room full of mates round my house playing this in the winter of 1989. One of the last times I had a crowd round playing on a Commodore 64. And we all had a blast seeing who could get the furthest or get the fastest time. And no one mentioned the visuals or the sound. We just had a great time playing this absolute classic. I had kept my Commodore 64 around for a while, even after I got my Sega Master System. The plan was to keep it in use until I built up a decent collection of games for the Master System. But that winter was the last time my Commodore 64 would ever see the light of day. But games like Power Drift, Batman the Caped Crusader and the In-Crowd compilation pack gave the little 8-bit micro the perfect swan song in my opinion. And actually, 1989 was not a terrible year for the Commodore 64, but it was obvious the machine was well past its prime. Power Drift was an amazing success for Sega, but the absence of it on its own consoles was always a mystery to me. It got ported to just about every home micro, and it even got ported to the PC Engine. But for some reason, Sega did not release it on any of its own hardware at the time. I think its first appearance on a Sega machine was on the Sega Ages compilation for the Saturn in 1998. 10 years later. Truly astonishing. Anyway, that was my look back at Power Drift. I highly recommend you go and play this game. It's awesome. And as always, a massive thanks to all who have liked, commented and subscribed to my channel. It really does mean a lot for the growth of the channel. And that's all from me folks. Thanks for watching.